Hey, it is Zennial Gamer doing my first VP review in I don't remember how long, but I thought it would be fun to do one of these. I haven't in a while. I have skimmed through parts of this, but I have not read about 85% of it at all. Haven't really processed the 15% I did read, so this is going to be mostly reaction in real time. So, with that said, we're going to jump straight into the good news, guys! Windy finally nerfed. Not removed from the game. That would have been better news. Obviously, this is more of a high-level siege thing. This is something that high-level siege players have been calling for years, and come to us finally, partially, listen. Now, the reality is it enough? I don't know. I would have liked to have seen a bigger nerf on him, to be honest. Honestly, I really would have liked to have just seen that monster deleted from the game, or nerfed into non-existence. But it's something. It is definitely a start, and with this, maybe we can start to test one of the entire 5 elements of the game that has been blocked out of defense for the past several years. Literally, like, the only fire unit that ever succeeds on defense is Tasari, and sometimes you can see like a Carcano or a Perna, but Windy just dominates them. So if this is enough that it's possible to kill a Windy, it's a start. Alright, next up we have my Nikki. So this is actually a really big nerf. 20% damage decrease on the S3. Obviously the S1 doesn't do damage, it just cycles, which is still a strong skill. S2 is also a strong skill, but doesn't do damage. It's a team heal and cleanse. So when you look at Nikki, her overall kit has been reduced by about 20% damage. She's still a really strong monster, guys, and so you can see #1 win rate according to SW Arena in RTA this season. Also been my strongest siege defense monster for ages, and she's really strong on some siege offenses, arena offense. I use her in PvE content. I mean, she's a really strong unit. Am I sad about the nerf? Yeah. Do I think it's fair? I have to admit I do. So I'm also not surprised that it happened. And with that said, we'll move on, and we'll see how she does. I think it's going to be noticeable. I think we're going to feel the difference, but I think she's still going to be a good monster. Honestly, again, it sucks to have my best LD5 nerfed, but it's fair, and I can deal with that one. When it's fair, I can deal with it. All right, next up, we have like the 70 millionth nerf to Veronica. Veronica and Kinky have to be in the Summoner's War Hall of Fame for most times being nerfed, just like Shihu is in the Hall of Fame for most times being pointlessly buffed. Like, he's not actually that OP now, but there was a time when he was he was like a top 5 RTA unit, and then he was still getting buffed like 2 patches in a row. But anyway, Veronica nerf, I will say I think this one is unwarranted, and I do not have Veronica. So you guys can tell I'm trying to be really fair and impartial here. My best LD5 gets nerfed, I say it's fair. LD5 I don't have gets nerfed, I think it's kind of unfair. I have used Veronica on other people's accounts. I think Veronica, she is still a really high win rate. She's 52% if we look over at SW Arena data. But she's 52% because of the types of teams she's played in, the overall comp she's played in. I honestly don't think this nerf is going to change her win rate that much, but I think it forces her even further into a niche bubble. So although she has 52% win rate, also a 9, but to be fair, she's also a 9% play rate. So from RTA data alone, and she is an RTA only monster, you cannot use her anywhere else, maybe it's fair. But they just brought in the water hacker that does something extremely similar. Actually, is it identical? Is she now identical to the water hacker? I think she's identical to the water. Is she? Dude, that's stupid. Is she seriously exactly the same skill as the water hacker now? Hang on. Alright, water hacker. Attacks all enemies to remove beneficial effects. Okay, no, so he doesn't have the AoE 1 turn. He just has single turn. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know, SW Arena data over here. SW Arena data is telling us that she probably should be nerfed, but I've used her before. I don't feel like she's that crazy strong. I think anything that does an AoE strip into a cooldown reset is strong, but yeah, I'm gonna say this one was not deserved. I don't know how much it'll change her. I'm not a Veronica owner, so I guess we'll see, but that one feels kind of undeserved to me, or at least a little too much. I don't know. If you are going to do that big of a nerf on her S3, then give her back the damage on her S2, which I know Amber owners, shout out to Shizo, would be happy about anyway. But yeah, so there you go. All right, Dokebi Lords. Violent swing stun chance reduced from 30 to 15%, and then to balance the nerf to the entire family, the Dark One gets a second nerf. So the Dark One right now gets unlimited attack bar gain when the enemy recovers HP. This says it's going to be up to 30% per turn as an overall cap. So he can only gain 30% attack bar whenever the enemy heals. So if we look up Gapsu over here, we'll see that his win rate was 50.77%. Honestly, that's not deserving of a double nerf. I think this nerf is really unfortunate. You have one of the fusion monsters in the game that people are enjoying that's actually good. His strongest combo is with Ragdoll, which is already an LD5. This is, to me, an overreaction by Com2uS. They're reacting to people complaining about him, basically. But the data, to me, doesn't support it. I think a monster that's under 51% win rate, especially one that's only been in the meta for a couple of months and people are still learning how to counter it, it doesn't really deserve a nerf. This is unfortunate because it's a really big nerf. The S1 is the biggest part of this nerf. The passive being capped at 30% bar gain. That one would have been fine with me either way. But if you combine it with the S1 nerf, I feel like that's just too much, especially when you're talking about a fusion unit, something that people can actually access. Yeah, so far, I think the Veronica nerf is supported by data. I'm just not a fan of it. And I think the Dark Dokebi Lord, Gapsu, I think his nerf is not supported entirely by data, and I'm really not a fan of it. But there you have it. Okay. Now, for the rest of the Dokebis, they have buffed Youngnam, or Youngnam, however you pronounce him, the Water Dokebi Lord, in order to balance out the fact that he no longer has S1 stuns. Is he a stronger monster now than he was before? Yes. This is a net buff. AoE attack bar absorb goes to 40%, which is basically an insta-turn cycle. It allows him to completely lap when there's 3 enemies on the field. Obviously, before 30% times 4 was 120. So he could lap before, but when there was only 3 enemies or 2 enemies on the field, he could not fully lap, and he couldn't be used so much in other areas other than RTA control teams. The 40% absorb is actually pretty big. It's kind of like the Ethna level of bar cycling. So they give up 15% skill 1 stun chance to allow him to fully turn cycle when he passes AC-Res checks, but also now he only has to pass 3 AC-Res checks if he had a little bit more bar than you. Overall, what they've done is make a CC unit stronger and an anti-CC unit weaker between the Dark and the Water ones. To be fair, they made the CC unit of Veronica weaker, and they made the Cleave unit of Nikki weaker, so I guess there is some overall vision of balance in there, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Water Dokebi Lord's buff. I'm not a huge fan of the Dark Dokebi Lord's nerf. Fire Dokebi Lord, they increase the damage you deal in proportionate to enemies' destroyed HP. I think he's actually a decent unit, but his problem was, although he's decent, he was kind of limited in areas that he could be used. I don't know if this solves that, but I understand the conundrum here because because he already was an actually reasonably strong unit just without a place to be used at the moment in current metas, if you overbuff him, he would break the game. So I think this is fair. I don't think it changes anything with him, but I think it's fair. And obviously this is just to offset the S1 nerf. Now, notably absent here, there is no buff to Byung-Chul. This is just a straight nerf to Byung-Chul. Is that stupid? Yes. Straight up, it's stupid. People complain about units because they haven't figured out how to counter them yet. Byung-Chul is not actually that strong or crazy broken of a unit. He doesn't have the highest win rate in Siege. He is one of the very few units that cannot be sniped on Siege defense, which is absolutely critical considering there are so few units viable on Siege defense to begin with. He has a 50%, 50.4% win rate in RTA. Nothing about this unit was broken, so nerfing him is stupid. There you go, true takes. But overall, so far, I think the Windy nerf does make everything else. You know, you guys can see I'm still smiling. I haven't agreed with almost any of this balance patch yet, but they nerfed Windy, so there's almost nothing they can do for the rest of the balance patch that's going to piss me off because they nerfed Windy. I don't even know if the Windy nerf is big enough, but at least it's a start. All right, moving on. Light Dokebi Lord. I did forget to mention, I do have, Yulong is his name, so this is one of my LD5s. They removed one of the stupid qualifiers on his S3. The problem is that he wasn't a very good unit to begin with. He's not really usable almost anywhere. Mine, I will actually show you guys exactly how I have mine ruined, and this will tell you everything you need to know about how good or not good of a unit he is. This is how I use my LD5. He is in triple fight with no stats, and he just sits there on my R5. He's not ruined in RTA, he's not ruined anywhere else. This is literally the extent of use that I have for this LD5. He is a slightly worse Deborah. A slightly different Deborah, because he works better when there's no attack buff, and then he works worse when there is attack buff. Anyway, this nerf plus buff that he basically got, they nerfed his S1, they buffed his S3. The S3 buff would not have been enough even if it was only an S1 nerf, so as it is, he's still not a good unit. He's still a bad unit. Alright, Burget, 52% win rate. Going back to that original screen, one of the highest RTA win rate monsters, especially among those that are drafted on a frequent basis. I think this nerf actually is fair, and to be honest, I think they got the nerf right. It feels relatively balanced to me. I fought Burget and I'm sure I'm butchering the name. You guys can butcher me in comments, that's fine. I fought this monster a lot in RTA. It is really annoying. It is a very strong unit, and I think the overall nerf is fair. I think some of the owners will disagree because the activation rate already being low frustrates a lot of the owners of the Light Ivor. But 52%, 52.19%, third highest overall win rate monster in RTA among monsters that are drafted 3% of the time. It seems fair to me. For the Fire one, they are changing the S2, I believe, to increase damage by 50%. I mean, to be honest, I guess to be fair, if they ever created a way that we couldn't just cleave everything in Siege, then that one might be an interesting unit for Siege defense. I don't know. Now that Windy's been nerfed, every fire unit in the game has to be reevaluated for Siege defense. Now that Windy's been nerfed, I don't know that I can do that on the fly right now. I've never used Fire High 4, so I can't really evaluate it on the fly. But yeah, I mean, maybe the damage buff increases the net nerf on the S2. I'm not sure. All right, Water Devil Maiden removes a beneficial effect from the enemy and absorbs all of its attack bar. It still sucks. Let me be fair. That's actually a really big buff. That is a really big buff. The problem is that the skill sucks. So let me be fair. That is actually a really big buff. The problem is, who cares? It's never going to take a turn. So the problem with the Water Devil Maiden is, and always has been, that it has no mechanic that is going to allow it to take a turn. All you can do is just hope for some RNG or something. Also, the skill really doesn't do enough. Taking a unit off the field was Yogun's thing, but Yogun, when he was really strong, was because he was giving you an AoE attack buff and an AoE speed buff, and then after they removed the speed buff, he was really not quite as good. Allowing the Water Devil Maiden to cycle doesn't seem to go in the right direction for me. There's been a lot of buffs that we've seen little changes that made big differences to monsters, particularly as meta shifted. Vanessa, I was on record as saying the Vanessa S2 buff would do nothing on the last one, and although her win rate is still not great in RTA, she's absolutely spammed in RTA. So maybe there's something I'm not seeing on this one, but to me, I feel like the unit will still get no play whatsoever, because who cares if it gets more turns, and because the actual bind demon bag skill doesn't do enough to begin with, and just in general, it's never going to get a turn. All right, Ritsu. This is an LD5 I have as well, and this is a nerf. Now, I believe they've taken, so this one I did see because it's one of my LD5s. This one they've taken the Van Cleef route of thinking they're buffing a unit by making it worse because they don't understand the unit. That's my assessment here. So, Ritsu, his thing is basically that he steals turns, and the only way I've ever found where he's even been slightly effective is countering Juno and to a certain extent maybe Shizuka in RTA. but generally not that great into Shizuka except in really niche situations. Against Juno, he is actually really a strong counter. So, from the perspective of really the only thing that this unit does is counter Juno in certain RTA drafts, and he does nothing anywhere else, let's read the effect added. The target with the Shadow Trap gets its attack speed 40% decreased, and your attack speed gets faster by the reduced attack speed when the Shadow Trap is removed, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Alright, so the thing with Ritsu, and let me pull him up for those of you who are not familiar with him. The thing with Ritsu, and his biggest issue, is that the passive here, his two biggest issues. One is that he can't get a turn. Two is actually that he's so stat hungry that only a couple % of the game can build him well. And then 3 is that the Shadow Trap has a cooldown. Now, I will tell you, it needs a cooldown. This skill would be stupid broken. He would be the strongest unit in the game by infinity if it did not have a cooldown, because he would just be Gurkha with damage, and he'd be worse than Gurkha. He'd be worse than Gurkha was in the Gurkha era, right? Has to have a cooldown. But the issue with this cooldown is that the cooldown activates every time you use the skill. So if the entire team has will runes, you're going to activate the cooldown with no chance of the skill actually shadow trapping the enemy. If you get Ac-Res resistant, because it does have an Ac-Res check, then you're on cooldown again, things like that. So the biggest fix to Ritsu would have honestly been just that the cooldown only gets activated when the skill is successful, kind of like second. Instead, what they've done is they've given him an attack speed buff, and then they have decreased the opponent's attack speed. So I believe what their idea here is that if Ritsu shadow traps the enemy with the lowest attack bar, Ritsu can then cycle in front of that enemy, allowing him to burn another skill so that he's back off of cooldown when he steals the turn from the enemy with the lowest attack bar. There are multiple issues with this. First of all, Ritsu may not be alive by the time he steals that next turn. Second, Ritsu may proc and be off of cooldown, etc., etc. It's just bad. They have nerfed this unit, which was already a very low tier niche unit, because they didn't understand it. Same thing that happened to Van Cleef. That frustrates me. But again, Windy got nerfed. I'm happy. That's all I've got to say. Windy got nerfed. All right. Wigerld, arguably one of the worst, if not the worst, Nat 5s in the game, so I really don't remember what he does, but I feel like he does like a not 100% bomb, and then he has like really low base attack and grants himself some useless beneficial effects when he misses his bombs or something like that. Well, when he lands them, but he can't land them because he doesn't activate the attack ranks. But alright, so Wigerld decreases cooldown by 1 turn if you have 2 or more beneficial effects, so now he can not activate on bombs more frequently. That would be my read of that. Let's see here. Attacks all enemies 2 times. First one installs a bomb with a 60% activation rate. That is Dancing Star. That's the correct skill, correct? Yes. And then the passive, whenever you grant harmful effects on the enemy with your skill, you get shield immunity or counterattack. And why would we care about counterattack when you have a 40% chance to attack power break? I mean, who cares, honestly? But whatever. Okay, so that's what he gets. He is still trash, still absolute trash. You can reduce his cooldown by buffing him with other units, but why would you care? It's a 4-turn cooldown skill, so you could cycle it down to 2-turn cooldown so that you could miss bombs more frequently with a base attack of 758. Like, why do you care? Terrible unit, not changing. Alright, Fire Geralt is actually a decent unit. He was the best of the Geralts to begin with, so increasing the stun chance to 50% arguably makes him better than Rika now. So you already had it's attacks all enemies 3 times, each does continuous damage for 2 turns, and then if the continuous damage unit was stunned, now at 50, so now it goes up to 70%. So there is no activation, or no activation rate in skill ups, but still 70% stun chance with a very Rika-like skill. I think he is. Yeah, and the skill 2 that he's got is also better than Rika's skill 2. Other than Rika's slow is really useful, but the AoE defense break is strong. I don't know. Fire Gerald's at least as good as Rika now. I think they might be situational as to which one you use where, but they're both really strong units. All right, Light Gerald. This was already a strong unit. Granted, he does have some challenges with getting a turn, but once he gets a turn, he takes over the match. I've never faced the unit other than once on Siege Defense. I don't have a real strong opinion on it other than the replays I've seen and everything. He seemed fairly strong. Maybe what we want to do for that one is go to, yes, SW Arena I don't believe has the Geralds loaded, so we can't see his win data. I don't know, maybe his win rate was lower than I was aware of. I had actually thought he was a fairly strong unit, but having never used him, I'm probably not the best judge here. Dark Gerald. So now we have, Dark Gerald. If I remember correctly, Dark Gerald was just a joke. Let's see. Increases duration of bennies by 1 turn. Increases damage dealt by 20%. Harmful activation by 10% for every benny granted on yourself. And then he eats his own HP. I remember this kid now. And then he's got the Unreliable Bomb. So he's got the same Unreliable Bomb, except he could increase his activation rate, right? So now, if we go increase harmful effect activation rate by 20%. So now you only need to have 2 buffs on him to make him act like a normal freaking bomber. So as long as you put 2 buffs on him, then he's a worse John? Something like that? Yeah, to be fair, so the passive is kind of unique. Let's see. Let's read this one more time. Increases the duration of beneficial effects granted by skills on yourself by 1 turn. So we can't increase will runes. That's unfortunate. That would actually, without that qualifier, he would actually be pretty good, to be fair. All right, additionally increases damage dealt to the enemy by 20%, but that doesn't impact bombs, so it's irrelevant because that's just his S1. So who cares? And he eats his own turn? He eats his own turn. He eats his own HP. Yeah, this unit is still utter trash, man. Yeah, it's still trash. He's still probably the worst LD5 in the game after the buff. Yeah, that's probably the case. All right. Light Siri goes from single attack to double attack. Not sure how much that accomplishes, but usually multiple hits are better than single ones. I don't know. Actually, it probably, yeah, you know, I almost wonder if this is kind of an unintentional nerf as well. I'm not sure if there's a real issue that they're addressing with the multi-hits here. Units like Byung-Chul would be weaker into multi-hits. Units like Water Hacker, if you could kill it, Wind Hacker, if you could kill it twice, would be weaker into multi-hits. On the flip side, you lose the benefits of things like first attack damage on your artifacts and own 1 turn. Not own 1 turn. No, I guess it's just first attack, right? I don't know. This seems like kind of a pointless change. Maybe they're fixing an issue that I'm just not aware of because I don't have the unit, but it doesn't seem like it does much. All right, Fire Macaron Guard, Fire Pudding Princess. So they have made it so that when she actually gets her damage reduction skill off, her attack speed drops to 100 instead of just a speed reduction. You can no longer affect her by attack speed increasing, decreasing effect. This also means that she can be used with like a speed lead in towers and then drop her attack speed to 100, so that's kind of legit. Let's see. Is this enough to make her usable? I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I mean, her limitation has always been that she can't get a turn, or by the time she gets a turn, it's too late. I don't know if she's going to be good or not, but I think she's worth testing. I guess I'll leave it at that. If she is good, she'll be really good. Yeah, interesting one. All right, Lucia, Pure Vanilla Cookie or Pudding Princess. So she now gains immunity against inability effects while reducing the amount of recovery that's provided to allies. I think this is a really strong buff. Granted, the recovery that she gave, you know, her sustain, especially on triple revenge build, was already strong. But her not being able to be stunned, this is a really strong, really impactful buff. You're going to see her played very, very frequently in the meta. I think she's going to be one of the strongest anti-CC units in the game going forward. Already was a very strong, very underrated unit, but her weakness was always despair stuns. And we'll talk about despair later. I did see that change. So I think this is going to actually catapult her into a very high level of being played with the meta. All right, Tasarian. They have buffed Tasarian. Interesting. Alright, so increases the Oblivion duration to 3 turns if the enemy is already under Oblivion effect. Decreases the damage dealt from enemies for less, and they've nerfed Tasarian. Increases the damage inflicted on enemies. They have nerfed Tasarian. Are you stupid? What the man? All right, I'm starting to lose the high that I got with Windy being nerfed. Oh man, why? All right, well, Tasarian's snipeable. One more siege defense monster, bye-bye. All right, so he does less damage, he decreases less damage, and if he procs, he adds 1 turn of Oblivion effect. Who cares? Stupid nerf. All right, Josephine. Buffs to 30% shield. Josephine doesn't change, man. Josephine's deal is this. If she procs, she's really strong. If she doesn't procs, she's not good. Always been her deal since her last round of buffs. That's always been her deal. If she procs one time and she cycles back to her shield, she's going to dominate and win a match for you single-handedly. If she doesn't proc, she's just going to get reset or stun, and she's never going to take a turn again. Josephine is very reliant upon bio procs. That's all it is. Very frustrating for the opponent when she procs, and very useless pick when she doesn't. I don't think the shield changes that, because you use Josephine into monsters for the most part that have a lot of strip skills. The shield is not really a major... I mean, don't get me wrong, it matters. Like, the shield does matter. I'm not trying to say it doesn't matter. But I don't think the change to the shield amount is going to make that much of a difference, unless they're just trying to make her more used in bruiser matches. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a fair buff. I just don't know that it does that much. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm underestimating it. Maybe I'm still pissed off that they just nerfed the siege defense monster. Why do you nerf siege defense monsters? Okay. Yeah, alright, moving on. So, I don't know if the Josephine shield buff matters. I think the buff itself is fair. Her win rate's probably pretty low, but her win rate is low specifically because she's proc reliant. You know, if she procs, she solos, and if she doesn't proc, she doesn't solo. Yeah, 49% is actually not terrible, honestly. Sema deals 50% increased damage to enemies under harmful effects, so... minor buff to Sema. Not sure why. I have Sema. Sema was fine. Did not really need a buff, but I honestly, to be fair, doesn't really make any difference. Like, I don't think that makes any difference to Sema. I also actually don't think that makes any difference to Beth. And I also think Beth was really strong. Since her last buff, Beth has been obnoxiously strong. She gets used with Layla a lot in RTA. And I bet you she's got a really high win rate as a result. Yeah, she's right at 50%. Totally unnecessary, pointless, and yeah, just wasted. Wasted buff. Absolutely no reason to do. Absolutely no reason for that buff to either of those two units. All right, Beast Monks. Okay. I think that's just the Beast Monk S1, actually. And if that is the Beast Monk S1, then it's not super impactful, but it is interesting. It's got to be the S1 because it's all 5 of them, right? Yeah, it's the S1. All right, so Beast Monks now always attack with a critical hit on their S1, but that's like pretty much not their biggest damage dealing skill. So Yeah, my initial reaction when I saw always land with a critical hit, I was like, oh, wow. But if it's S1 only, I don't think it really would change how I would build them. I would still pretty much have them all on crit rate builds. So I don't think it actually makes any difference whatsoever. All right, Desert Queen. Excuse me. Why am I drawing a blank on the monster name? Isis. So instead of silencing and then oblivioning, she oblivions and then silences. Order of operations thing that makes sense. That's fair. I think that's addressing a really niche situation where monsters have some sort of passive that causes them to throw off the silence. Yeah, pretty niche, but seems fine to me. All right, it seems like it must be addressing some specific counter to Isis to make that unit not counter Isis. I don't know which one off the top of my head. All right, Maya decreases the enemy HP of enemies granted with harmful effects by 20%. Don't know that Maya needed a buff, but I'm not against it, honestly. Maya's one of the few units still usable on siege defense, so buffs are good. Anything usable on siege defense, buffs are good. So I'm in favor of that. All right, Thebe, Deadly Wrath. Your attack bar will be increased by 50% if an ally or enemy gets defeated while the skill is on cooldown. That last part kills it. So you're still just gonna snipe any defense with Thebe on it. It's pointless. Does nothing. Maybe it makes him usable in RTA. Yeah, you know what? To be fair, because Thebe does really good damage. He has a great kit. His issue has always been just simply he can't get a turn. I might have moved past that one a little too quickly. I actually think that could make him RTA viable. That's interesting. Yeah, he might be RTA viable. So I take it back. I think that's a good buff. It just doesn't address siege. Obviously, everything for me always has a siege slam, but I think that's a good buff for Thebe. All right, Fire, Wind, Dark, Ryu. That I think Shoryuken is the S2. So it's basically because we already know S2 activates into S1, right? So makes no difference to the Wind one unless the next buff makes him better. He's still trash. Makes no difference to the Dark one. He's still trash. But for the Fire one, that's a pretty fair buff. And while people are traumatized by Douglas, Douglas has not actually been good for quite some time. And he's got a lot more counters now than he used to, and he was already not that great before. So RTA win rate 49%, yeah. Him having the chance to attack break stuff would be very helpful there. So that seems like a good buff for Douglas. Seems irrelevant for the Wind and Dark one. All right, Striker is the same thing. Yeah, so Wind Ryu, still ultra niche. He can be used in I've seen him used once ever in a siege counter, but mostly trash. Dark one, arguably the worst LD5 in the game, and they've nerfed him 3 times when he started at F tier and then they nerfed him 3 times. Not that I'm bitter and not that I haven't. All right, Fire Magic Knight, your attack speed. Okay. PvE only implication here, but holy crap. So Lapis, instead of getting faster, which always was a challenge for her, forced you to use things like shield runes and PvE teams, now she gains an attack buff when she receives damage. Now the words receive damage, does that mean that if she takes reflect damage in Necro, she gets an attack buff? Because if she does, Necro all of a sudden just became a whole lot more solvable. I mean, it's solved, obviously, but it's solved. All the teams that exist for Necro are really slow. Yeah, that one's cool. I like that. For PvE purposes, I like that. All right, so now we have Orion, Gemini, and Draco. Gains another turn with a 20% chance after using the skill 2. So that makes sense because people don't use skill 2 on those units. They only use skills 1 and 3. They use the skill 1 to try and cycle the skill 3. And then the same thing on the skill 2 for the Wind and Dark ones. So all of the Brownie Magicians. Yeah, it says it on screen. All of the Brownie Magicians now gain another turn with 20% chance on skill 2. For the Wind one, he already cycled his bar, so that's kind of weird because now he gains a turn twice on the skill 2. I don't know, that's weird, but doesn't matter. I don't think it changes him that much. It does make, to be fair, it does make Orion better on siege defense. Like I have a bunch of Orions built with like skill 2 not skilled up. So maybe it makes him a little better on siege defense. That's something. Alright, Fire Sky Dancer. So Wahi increases the attack bar of all allies by 10% every time you attack the enemy with defense decreased. I don't know if that screws up some of my PvE teams right now. It's not a bad buff. Not a bad buff. Wahi, really good PvE unit. I've also used, believe it or not, I've used Wahi in siege offense before. Very niche offenses, but very underrated unit. Interesting. I don't like the fact that it's a qualified buff. That's an issue for me because it could mess with some of your turn order sequencing, but the fact that, yeah, I don't know. I have mixed emotions on that one. I think it's probably, for the most part, useless, to be honest, because you can't rely on her attacking an enemy with defense broken, and so you would build everything like there was no attack bar there. So yeah, I think that one's kind of just useless. All right, so Barbarian Kings, instead of losing their max HP, they lose their defense by 30%. That is a valid buff. The max HP reduction made them really hard to use, so their Berserker state now instead is a defense reduction. I think that makes them better. Are they good enough yet? Probably not at high level siege, certainly not at like RTA. For Special League, they could be pretty strong. At lower level siege, they could be pretty strong. That could be really helpful, particularly to Mimir. The light one can be really, really good. So yeah, I'm game with that. It doesn't address the issue of them just not being able to get turns. Actually, you know what? I take it back. Water one too. Ajir and Mimir could really benefit from that. Dark one has always been trash. Will always be trash. He's just an RNG unit. And then Hraesvel gets used in cleaves and PvE stuff, so I'm not sure how much this changes. Fire one Searcher. There's not really much with Death Prevent being used in the game at the moment, so Searcher is just not in the meta. All right, and then we have buffs on. I don't remember the name of the Fire Captain, but he now, let's see. He used to be the only other monster besides CR that could detonate bombs. Let's see. So decreases the skill cooldown of bombardment by 1 turn if the bomb was set off and instantly gains an. Okay. So they're actually adding to that. So he's still the only other unit that can detonate a bomb, but now he also reduces his cooldown. Something like that. I'm not sure. Seems like he's still not a good unit. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe. Yeah, I mean, if the bomb goes off, the units die and the fight's over. So why do you care about cooldown? I don't know. Doesn't seem impactful, but I haven't used, I think Bark was his name. I haven't used him ever, like literally ever in 6 years playing this game. So yeah, who knows? And then let's see, Frigate. Stun chance reduced, awesome. But installs a bomb for 2 turns with a, okay. So if we put these two together, I was trying to remember if I didn't think the Fire Captain was a bomber. So he was not, but now he is. But it's a 50% chance when attacking, so who cares, because we're not going to rely on RNG. Let's see, Frigate decreases the cooldown time of full speed ahead if the enemy is defeated while the skill is on cooldown. Frigate buff legit, guys. The bomb, who cares? Like the bomb is nothing, literally nothing. Terrible, pointless waste of text on screen. The reduction of cooldown time, that is super freaking legit. That's just like hidden at the very bottom of this balance patch, right? But so here's the deal with Frigate. 108 base speed, 50% attack bar on a 4-turn cooldown. This unit never really gets used because even though he's the highest base speed attack bar booster in the game, I believe, he's higher than Hanya. I think he's highest base speed attack bar booster in the game. half of his skill, the reduction of cool time, doesn't get used because you run him first, which was always pointless. That always should have been changed to something else if they wanted him used. But if you changed it to something else, then you did run the risk, because it's also a crazy high. It's 50% attack bar boost. So not only is he the highest base speed, he's also the biggest attack bar booster. One of the biggest AoE attack bar booster. So it was always hard for them to do things like add attack buff, because then he would have been broken. If you added attack buff, you would have had to have greatly reduced the amount of bar boosted, and then he's just like a worse Hung Yun or something. So this is really interesting, because now what they're doing is changing the types of combos that you would use him in. Completely changing those combos. This is legit. This is legit. I think he is actually going to start getting used more frequently at high level siege. I think he's probably already used at low level siege. But I think he got better for low level siege, and he's going to get used more frequently at high level siege. Alright. So 2 rune set changes. Despair rune, when glancing hit is landed, the stun rate is reduced by half. This was needed, in my opinion. This is a really good change. The thing is, when they increased Despair to only work on the first hit, regardless of glance or not glance, they basically buffed Despair, and it's been very impactful. So now what they're doing is bringing Despair back to where it was originally supposed to be. Glancing hit lands, 50% chance, so 12.5% chance to stun. Makes it a lot less likely that you're going to see more single target stunning your wind units, and a lot more tilting when it happens, to be fair. But yeah, I think there's a really good change. And then Seal Rune. Seal Rune's going up to 25%. Definitely that was necessary. And then when glancing is landed, reduced by half. That keeps it fair as well. So I like both of these changes. I think these are really good changes. Awakening effects of some monsters changed. So Wind Siri instead of... Interesting. So Wind Siri is an ignore defense unit that awakens... Interesting. So Wind Siri is an ignore defense unit that awakens into 121 base speed. But does that make her... I mean, isn't she still worse than Sonya? She doesn't even fully ignore. It's only missed 2 times. I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, she's not... Before, she was like one of the worst Nat 5s in the game. Still pretty neat. I don't know if this is enough, but it's an awfully good start. The problem is, what do I run in front of her? Like, I'm not going to be able to get a stripper in front of her. Ethna maybe for single target, that's about it. So her having a 121 base, all it really does is allow me to put more stats on her, which is not a bad thing, but like... She doesn't have the auto crit of the water one. She's more of a cycling, not exactly a CC unit, but more of just a cycling unit. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like Masha. Remember Masha had the... I mean, Masha's good now because of the immunity that she... The self-immunity that she puts up, but when Masha was 120 base speed, everybody's like, oh, that's busted, but she was the worst of the Beast Riders for ages because being the fastest unit on your team when you don't strip does nothing for you. So, it's a start. It is a start on the Wind Siri, but I think she's still not a good monster. Alright, light pure vanilla cookie, instead of increasing resistance by 25%, she now gets a cooldown. Ooh, hold up. That might be legit. If that's... Because I don't have that unit, so I don't know the skill names. But I think I know what that is, and that's pretty good. 11 piece. Never mind, not legit. Okay. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad, but I thought it was this skill. I thought it was the revive endure skill. Or endure and cooldown. And revive. Yeah, whatever. Alright, it's something. It's something. I don't know if it's enough for her, but it does make her better. It certainly makes her better. So it's a step in the right direction. Alright, Beth, awaken. Are you... What the Bro! They buffed Beth twice. She was already a strong unit. Idiotic, man. Idiotic. All these crap units in the game get ignored, and you have really strong units getting 2 buffs. Alright, Savannah changed resistance into accuracy awakened. That makes sense. It's about 2 years overdue. I don't think this makes Savannah any more viable than she is anywhere else right now. Maybe? No, I don't think so. It's 2 years overdue. It does make sense. I mean, it should have happened a long time ago. I don't think it changes Savannah much. And then Chassoon. That's cool. So they dropped the Resistance Awakening on Chassoon to give immunity for 2 turns to allies with full HP. As a 4-star unit, Chassoon might have just become viable again. At least at maybe lower level siege and maybe even in some PvE situations as a support unit. So I think the Chassoon change is pretty cool. Alright, last of the balance patch. Here we go. So some stats of monsters changed. Base speed of the Magic Knights increased, but only by 5. This is going to break a lot of people's PvE teams where you have Lapis built. So that's a little annoying, but otherwise this is something that's been overdue for quite a long time. Hold up. Iris. Iris now has a 110 base. That's interesting. Is it enough though? It's probably not. To be fair, it's probably not enough. I was in the back of my mind while I'm reading this, I was like, why would they only increase by 5? Like, not at least bring them up to 99 or 100 or something. So, I mean, so Lynette, the dark one, always seemed interesting, but her base speed, because she has a speed lead, but she's got an interesting kit, and she has a speed lead. But having a 90 base speed always made her completely unusable. If she was like 101, 102, she'd have a pretty cool kit. Maybe the metas have passed her by anyway, but in prior metas, she had a pretty cool kit. I don't know. I don't think this is enough, but I think that they probably only did 5 because of Iris, and I think Iris with a 110 base is definitely interesting. So I'm okay with them doing it in stages as long as they give them another 5 if it turns out not. If it turns out that Iris is not broken, they should give them another 5 next match. That's what I would say. Alright, and then Fire and Dark Barbarian Kings, 2 worst ones. They increase the proportion of attack power and HP. Who cares? They're still the 2 worst ones. They're still using speeds. And then some skill errors of monsters will be fixed. So Light Hacker, Broken Bug, and yeah, just a bunch of bug fixes down here. Water, Fire, Dark, Shadowcaster. Yeah, niche bug fixes. Alright guys, that is it. So that is it for our balance patch review. I'm only going to be doing light editing, so this was probably a stupid long video. If you guys enjoyed the video, thank you for watching all the way through. Please remember to smash the like button, put a thumbs up, leave a comment, do all the normal stuff. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.